The humble servant. Once upon a time, in a prosperous kingdom, there lived a nobleman named Lord Alfred. He was wealthy and powerful, owning vast lands and estates. His mansion, nestled at the top of a hill, overlooked the entire kingdom, and many admired him for his riches and influence. However, Lord Alfred was known for something else as well: his pride. He believed that his wealth and power were the result of his superior intellect and leadership, and that no one could match his abilities. Despite his grandeur, Lord Alfred had one flaw that his servants whispered about behind his back. He was a poor listener. He rarely accepted advice from others, believing that only he knew what was best. His decisions were often rash, and though he meant well, his pride often clouded his judgment. One day, Lord Alfred decided to hire a new servant to manage his estate. He wanted someone who would obey him without question, someone who would recognize his superiority and follow his orders without offering suggestions. So he sent out a notice across the kingdom, announcing that he was seeking the perfect servant. From a small, humble village in the valley below, a man named Felix read the notice. Felix was not wealthy, nor did he come from a prestigious family, but he was known for his wisdom and kind heart. He had worked for several families in the past, earning respect for his quiet, thoughtful manner and his ability to solve problems without making a fuss. When Felix arrived at Lord Alfred's mansion, the nobleman looked him over, unimpressed by the simple clothes Felix wore and his unassuming appearance. "You don't seem like the type who would be suited for a grand estate like mine," Lord Alfred remarked, raising an eyebrow. Felix, with a humble smile, bowed his head. "My lord, I may not be grand, but I serve with diligence and loyalty. If you choose me, I promise to care for your estate as if it were my own." Lord Alfred, still skeptical, decided to hire Felix. He figured a man of such humble background would know his place and follow orders without question. "Very well," Lord Alfred said, "but remember this: I am in charge, and you are here to do as I say. I have no need for your advice, just your obedience." Felix nodded without protest. "As you wish, my lord." Lord Alfred wasted no time in assigning Felix a series of tasks. From managing the household staff to overseeing the maintenance of the vast gardens, Felix quickly became responsible for nearly every part of the estate's daily operations. Lord Alfred, meanwhile, continued to focus on the affairs of the kingdom, attending meetings with other noblemen and managing his investments. At first, Felix quietly observed how things were run. He saw that many of the staff were overworked, yet they were too afraid to speak up. The gardens, once beautiful, had become overgrown because the gardener had not been given the proper tools. The servants in the mansion were unorganized, often receiving conflicting orders from Lord Alfred, who rarely noticed the strain he placed on them. Despite these problems, Felix did his job without complaint. He completed each task efficiently and kept the household running as smoothly as he could. But he knew that changes were needed, and though he had many ideas, he kept them to himself, remembering Lord Alfred's warning not to offer advice. One day, as Felix was tending to the gardens, Lord Alfred approached him, looking concerned. "I have a problem, Felix," Lord Alfred said, pacing back and forth. "Tomorrow, I'm hosting a grand banquet, and I've invited the kingdom's most important noblemen and ladies. Everything must be perfect. However, the ballroom hasn't been cleaned, and the kitchen staff is overwhelmed with preparations. I don't know how they'll get everything done in time." Felix thought for a moment, then spoke carefully. "My lord, if I may offer a suggestion, perhaps we could divide the staff into smaller teams. One team could focus on the ballroom, another on the kitchen, and a third could assist with the decorations." Lord Alfred frowned, crossing his arms. "I didn't ask for your opinion, Felix. I just want the problem solved." Felix bowed his head. "As you wish, my lord. I will see to it." Without further protest, Felix discreetly divided the staff, organizing them into small, efficient teams. By the end of the day, the ballroom was spotless, the kitchen was prepared, and the decorations were set. When Lord Alfred inspected the work, he was surprised to see that everything had been done to perfection. "Well done, Felix," Lord Alfred said, though he still took credit for the outcome. "It seems my leadership has once again ensured success." Felix only smiled and nodded, not seeking any recognition. A few weeks later, a more serious problem arose. The nearby river, which supplied water to the estate, had started to dry up. Without the river, the gardens would wither, and the household would suffer without fresh water. Lord Alfred, once again feeling out of his depth, called for Felix. "We're running out of water," he said, frustration in his voice. "I've sent for engineers, but they say it will take weeks to repair the channels leading to the river. I can't wait that long." Felix listened patiently, then spoke calmly. "My lord, we have an underground well on the estate. If we repair the old well, we can use it to supply water to the gardens and the household until the river is restored." Lord Alfred scoffed. "The well? It hasn't been used in years. Surely it's dried up by now." Felix didn't argue. "Would you like me to inspect it, my lord? If it is still functional, it could be a temporary solution." Reluctantly, Lord Alfred agreed. Felix immediately went to work, gathering a few workers to help clear the debris from the old well. To everyone's surprise, the well was still full of fresh water, and within hours, the estate had a new source of water. The gardens flourished once more, and the household had plenty of water to drink. Lord Alfred, though pleased, still refused to acknowledge Felix's wisdom. "It seems I was right to keep the well on the property after all," he said. "My foresight has saved the day." Again, Felix only smiled and continued his work, happy to help without seeking praise. As the months passed, the estate ran more smoothly than ever, thanks to Felix's quiet efforts. But then came the day of Lord Alfred's greatest challenge yet. The kingdom fell into a financial crisis, and the nobleman found himself struggling to manage his estates. His investments began to fail, and his wealth started to dwindle. Worse still, Lord Alfred had promised a large donation to the kingdom's treasury to help the people, but now, he wasn't sure he could fulfill that promise. One evening, Lord Alfred sat in his study, his head in his hands. "I don't know what to do, Felix," he admitted, his voice filled with frustration. "If I don't find a way to stabilize my finances, I'll lose everything." Felix, who had been carefully observing the situation, spoke up with humility. "My lord, if I may be so bold, I have a plan that might help. I've noticed that much of your wealth is tied up in unnecessary luxuries, things that do not benefit the estate or the people. If we simplify the estate's operations and focus on helping the people in need, you may find that your wealth will return in other ways." Lord Alfred looked at Felix, surprised by his directness. For the first time, he truly listened to his servant. Simplify the estate? Focus on the people. Felix nodded. "Yes, my lord. Instead of hoarding wealth, share it. Support the farmers, invest in the local businesses, and help rebuild the community. In time, your generosity will come back to you." After a long pause, Lord Alfred sighed. "You've served me well, Felix, and perhaps I've been too proud to see your wisdom. Let's try your plan." Following Felix's advice, Lord Alfred began to make changes. He cut back on unnecessary expenses, helped the local farmers by buying their crops at fair prices, and donated to the village school. As the people prospered, so did Lord Alfred's estate. His investments stabilized, and his wealth began to grow again, not from hoarding, but from giving back to the community. One day, as Lord Alfred stood overlooking his flourishing estate, he turned to Felix and smiled. "You've taught me more than I ever thought possible, Felix. I now see that true leadership isn't about giving orders or showing off wealth. It's about listening, helping, and using wisdom to guide those in need." Felix, as always, smiled humbly. "It has been an honor to serve, my lord." And from that day forward, Lord Alfred became known not only as a wealthy nobleman, but as a wise and humble leader, thanks to the quiet guidance of his humble servant Felix. True leadership comes from humility, listening, and using wisdom to serve others, not from wealth or power.
Thank you for listening. Like, subscribe, and share our channel Magic Mingle with your friends to enjoy more magical stories.